Alright, hello boys and girls, moms and dads. Welcome to HeroesMart Homeschool Academy. This is 5th grade Bible reading. And we are going to be doing week number 15 aspect of the curriculum today. And we are going to be reading through Luke chapter 14. And then right afterwards, we are going to get a chance to study this particular chapter of the book of Luke in Luke chapter 14. So the very first thing we are going to do right now is to get our Bibles and let us read Luke chapter 14 together.
Luke chapter 14. Now it happened, as he went into the house of one of the rulers of the Pharisees to eat bread on the Sabbath, that they watched him closely. And behold, there was a certain man before him who had dropsy. And Jesus, answering, spoke to the lawyers and Pharisees, saying, Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? But they kept silent. And he took him and healed him, and let him go. Then he answered them, saying, Which of you, having a donkey or an ox that has fallen into a pit, will not immediately pull him out on the Sabbath day? And they could not answer him regarding these things. So he told a parable to those who were invited, when he noted how they chose the best places, saying to them, When you are invited by anyone to a wedding feast, do not sit down in the best place, lest one more honorable than you be invited by him, and he who invited you and him come and say to you, Give place to this man, and then you begin with shame to take the lowest place. But when you are invited, go and sit down in the lowest place, so that when he who invited you comes he may say to you, Friend, go up higher. Then you will have glory in the presence of those who sit at the table with you. For whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. Then he also said to him who invited him, When you give a dinner or a supper, do not ask your friends, your brothers, your relatives, nor rich neighbors, lest they also invite you back, and you be repaid. But when you give a feast, invite the poor, the maimed, the lame, the blind. And you will be blessed, because they cannot repay you, for you shall be repaid at the resurrection of the just. Now when one of those who sat at the table with him heard these things, he said to him, Blessed is he who shall eat bread in the kingdom of God. Then he said to him, A certain man gave a great supper and invited many, and sent his servant at supper time to say to those who were invited, Come, for all things are now ready. But they all with one accord began to make excuses. The first said to him, I have bought a piece of ground, and I must go and see it. I ask you to have me excused. And another said, I have bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I am going to test them. I ask you to have me excused. Still another said, I have married a wife, and therefore I cannot come. So that servant came and reported these things to his master. Then the master of the house, being angry, said to his servant, Go out quickly into the streets and lanes of the city, and bring in here the poor and the maimed and the lame and the blind. And the servant said, Master, it is done as you commanded, and still there is room. Then the master said to the servant, Go out into the highways and hedges, and compel them to come in, that my house may be filled. For I say to you that none of those men who were invited shall taste my supper. Now great multitudes went with him. And he turned and said to them, If anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, wife, and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. And whoever does not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, intending to build a tower, does not sit down first and count the cost, whether he has enough to finish it, lest, after he has laid the foundation, and is not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, This man began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king, going to make war against another king, does not sit down first and consider whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20,000? Or else, while the other is still a great way off, he sends a delegation and asks conditions of peace. So likewise, whoever of you does not forsake all that he has cannot be my disciple. Salt is good, but if the salt has lost its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? It is neither fit for the land nor for the dunghill, but men throw it out. He who has ears to hear, let him hear.
All right, I believe you got a chance to read Luke chapter 14 together with us. So let's go ahead and turn our workbooks over to page number 39 and page number 40. And you are going to see that Luke 14, which is Luke chapter 14, actually may be sectioned into 5 major categories. There is section 1, section 2, section 3, section 4, and section 5. All right, so section 1 talks about how Jesus heals somebody on the Sabbath. And that's from verses 1 to 6. So a man who had dropsy came to the house of a Pharisee on the Sabbath. Jesus sees the man over there, and then he asks the lawyers and the Pharisees if it was going to be appropriate to heal somebody on the Sabbath. And in their hypocrisy, they remain silent. But Jesus goes ahead and heals the man, and he sends him away. Well, that's going to be the first part of Luke chapter 14, and that's going to be section 1 from verse 1 to verse 6. Then in section 2, Jesus talks about humility, gives a lesson about humility, and that's from verse 7 to verse 14. The first one is from verse 1 to verse 6, but then this section 2 is going to be from verse 7 to verse 14. So, Jesus was invited to a feast. He encourages people not to take the highest seat during the feast, because if somebody else who is a little bit more distinguished were to come into the party, you may be humiliated and asked to vacate your seat for that more noble person. So, but if you were to be invited to a place and you take the lowest seat in the meeting, the owner of the ceremony may see you and may promote you to a more important or more distinguished seating during the party. And so Jesus encourages us to be humbled, have a humble estimation of who you are so that God can lift you up in due season. All right, so in section number 3, that's going to be from verse 13 to verse 21. It's talking about the invitation to the great supper, how a certain man gave a great feast and invited many people. How those who were invited started making excuses. Well, I just bought a piece of property. I just got married. I just did this. And they didn't want to come over. So the man sent servants over and says, go ahead, just invite anybody you can find on the streets. The lame, the poor, the brokenhearted. Bring them over to my house, because my house has to be full and full to capacity. So that's section number 3. And section number 4 is how it is important to follow after the Messiah. Because this particular section, we are going to see that it is actually from verse 14 downward. And We are going to see over here how Jesus starts to tell people that you got to prioritize relationship with Jesus even above relationship with family members. So let's take a look at it. So this one is going to be from verse 14. Let's see here. So this is going to be from verse 15, I believe. From verse 15 to verse 24. Let's put verse 15 to verse 24 here. And then this one, section 4, is going to be from verse 25 to verse 33. So this is 25 to 33. And then section 5 is going to be from verse 34 to verse 35. All right. Pardon our typographical error over there. All right. So section 3, which is going to be the invitation to the supper, we talked about that. It's going to be from verse 15 to 24. And then section 4 is going to be following after Christ, or following after the Messiah. Jesus was trying to tell people that you got to prioritize your allegiance to my cause above allegiance to families and relationships with sisters and brothers and things like that. That's what section 4 is trying to talk about. And then section 5 talks about the salt, how salt is going to be worthless if the salt loses its taste. And that's trying to tell us that we are not meant to lose our taste, because we are the salt and the light of the world. So do actions of righteousness and tell people about Jesus to be the salt of the world. So that's what section 5 is talking about of Luke chapter 14. So let's go ahead and try to answer a few questions right in here. So question number 1. According to this chapter, how do we practice humility? All right. So we know from the second part of this chapter, from verse 7 to verse 14, we know Jesus talks about how you can humble yourself by having a small estimation of yourself starting from your mind. Well, how do you do that? If you were to go to a party, for example, don't try to be the most important person in that party. Choose to take the back seat. Choose to be the person that is not going to be recognized. In that way, you are practicing humility. Don't try to be showy or try to push yourself forward in a group of people. All right, so that's how to practice humility in this instance. All right, question number 2. As the salt of the world, how should you live? Well, the way you're going to live is talked about over there in verse 34 to verse 35 of page number 39 of your workbook. So the way you're going to do that is to do good actions. You're going to be helping the poor and loving other people. You're going to be kind. You're going to push other people in the direction of righteousness, trying to tell them to do what is right. You're going to share the good news of the kingdom of God. Now, when you do all of those, you are the salt and the light of the world. All right, so please go ahead and use this page over here on page number 40 to document your answers, so you can commit to memory what you read in Luke chapter 14, week number 15 of grade 5 Bible curriculum from HeroesMart Homeschool Academy. Did you get something from it? All right, I sure hope so. Well, that's what we got for you today, boys and girls. Remember, God cares about you, and so do we. Bye-bye.
I'll be your hero's buddy, and as you study with HeroesMart, I will be your friend. So don't you